To the tribunal body here assembled, be mindful that my own life and that of others depends on writing this, and time is limited. I'll tell you as much as I can, but please take into consideration that I am under pressure and I may skip details. Please afford me the opportunity to clarify. She had mixed feelings whenever they began again. The birth of a new son is captivating, vibrantly colorful and sacred. Few things compare in beauty. She was one of those things, whose image must have been the most captivating in all the heavens. Her husband says she becomes more beautiful every time he gazes upon her, and it takes his godly strength to divert his attention to their tasks rather than to her. She sang a lullaby in a language I didn't know, but whose meaning was understood, and I was never the same after hearing it. She wanted to comfort the baby son, who was trembling. Absolute zero temperature burned its brand new skin, and it shivered in the freeze. She sang of warmth and calmed the loneliness that pained it. Without ears, it heard her voice and knew it was not as alone as it felt. It did feel so alone in its new place. Older sons who have seen their reasons for existence burn with purpose and love. This infant first needed to receive love for a certain amount of time before it could bring itself to look around the darkness for the beings that would depend on it for the same love and warmth. Not every son lives long enough to do that. Some give up too soon and become a blackened version of their potential. She prayed that this one would survive. It latched onto her music and was soothed to sleep in the encouraging, safe sounds of her melody. She remembered her mother singing her that same song when she was a wee mortal. What was once a sweet and simple melody now carried the weight of the life of worlds without number. She knew this son would endure the freeze. She smiled with tears and kissed his face to ward away nightmares that might try and corrupt him in the deadly, chilling darkness before he was old enough to open his eyes and see why he was born. He burned brighter than most already. God said that it was good, and she nodded in agreement and took God's hand and kissed his cheek. "Thank you," she said. They lovingly put their foreheads together and then turned and watched the growing blaze and listened to the crackle sounds like comrades or even outlaws huddled together on a stormy night around a campfire. And so this story began. It quickly turned from beauty to tragedy, and now there is a war in heaven, and I find myself under investigation because of my associations with my family members who instigated the conflict. She was watching creation and was so focused on the work of orchestrating nature that she did not immediately notice the cold approaching. Coldness is not something she had ever encountered, nor I. We are all familiar with heat and the absolute zero temperatures of the absence of heat, but we were under the impression that cold doesn't exist in and of itself. When she finally was conscious of the creature, it seemed to have possessed her husband. His eyes were no longer his own. A darkness that is more than the absence of light, and a hatred that is more than the lack of compassion bit and quickly began necrotizing his face from the orbs that were once his perfect eyes. Who once was the picture of majesty became the most frightening beast, whose intent to destroy became apparent as it reached out and doused the beautiful baby son. It was murdered, out of existence. It wasn't even a black sun. It was more than dead. For the first time in thousands of years, she felt overwhelmed with fear. A long tail of the cold abomination wrapped itself around her neck. What was her husband had metamorphized into a god of dark winter. A deadly storm arose around them, and rather than pure white snow that reflects bright light, a blizzard of ultra-black or almost violet frozen darkness cut her face and her lungs, and she began to suffocate from the thickening verglass encasing her. She was lifted up into the worst of the storm. and her heart desperately cried for the help of her father.